What
time's morning tea break?
Once we get through the first few slides. Right, so this is topics for today. I want to talk about forestry rates, the insurance. Had some news last week about premiums, performance measures, and vision for Wanganui high-level update. And after that, we will then break for morning tea. Then a little bit of modelling we've done on the port and airport. We talked about last workshop. I'll update you on that. There's been quite a few questions asked about the point of entry business cases. So David will take you through some of those slides, and as General Manager's here also to answer questions for projects within the area. And then a very high-level discussion on the consultation document. We do need to get to that last slide there. So I won't go through this. You've seen this is the roadmap. Obviously, December now, and the audit date is looming for the 24th of February. Just remind you, as well as auditing the consultation document. So, following today's meeting, the team will start writing the consultation document, and then we'll start sending draft out to you before we've got a meeting, I think the 1st of February, so we'll start sending stuff out to you just for you to feedback on the wording. As well as the consultation document, audit will also be looking at the infrastructure strategy, financial strategy, development policy, revenue financing policy, and we've also got to do some wording around the rates remission and postponement policies. So still quite a few policies for us to work on and to get that over the line in time for audit.
Sorry, Mike. That sounds good, but I don't remember ever auditing our consultation document. Does it always happen? It's just
yes, it does. They have to provide an audit opinion before we go out, and the audit opinion is that the consultation document is fit for its purpose, that is to consult with the public.
That's gone over my head in the past.
In more recent years.
Okay.
Yeah, legislative requirement.
Okay, so that's the timeline. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, audit, sorry, I had that wrong, as the 15th? 19th. I need to go to Specsavers. I'll just fast forward through this. Forestry rates. So this is a separate targeted rate we levy against exotic forestry properties. Now, exotic forestry properties are those properties that have forests that can be harvested, as opposed to native forests. So we introduced the rate in 2018. At that point, a number of the forestry blocks had matured and were starting to be harvested. And with the harvesting, you get a large volume of logging trucks. The volume and the weight of these trucks have caused significant damage to our roads. So we introduced a new rate in 2018, and it collected 155,000 from the forestry properties, and there's 212 properties at the moment that pay this rate. It's remained unchanged for the past 6 years, and at that time when we introduced the rate, the modelling we had done on the maturity of when these plantations were due to mature suggested that there'd be increased logging and increased damage in our roads from 24-25 onwards, and the rate would need to ramp up. The forestry sector provided significant feedback at that time. They were not supportive of a targeted rate. They were more in line of a fee charged to the properties who were causing the damage based on tonnage, mileage, that sort of stuff. A lot of work had been done by various parties, including ourselves, on this. The roading engineers, as well as a particular economist firm, spent a lot of time working on what alternative would look like. None of that really came to fruition because there was no viable alternative that we could come up with, or other groups could come up with, that would not pass undue risk to the general ratepayer. And so through that process, we came to realisation that the most viable option was a targeted rate, not a perfect solution. And through the Productivity Commission review on local government, including rates, we and a number submitted on the impracticalities of using a rate for this particular situation. That review came up with no alternative, suggested nothing alternative to that. So of all councils who have significant logging in their area, we're not aware of any other council using anything but a targeted rate. So we're in line with what the rest of the country are doing. Right, so this was in the 2018-28 long-term plan. Perhaps the assumptions down the bottom, perhaps if I list those first, the impact on the network over the 10 years of the long-term plan was estimated at $12.2 million. We assumed the Waka Kotahi would provide their subsidy of 61%. 61% was at that time. It's since gone up, as we know, for the new long-term plan to 62%. The out-of-town logging, that is those forests which are outside Wanganui, and they harvest and the logs travel through the Wanganui network, estimated to be around about 10% of the damage caused to our network. At that point, we decided that the cost of this would be shared between the forestry sector and also the general ratepayer through the roading rate, due to the wider public benefit of the forestry sector to the region, as well as affordability for the forestry sector as a whole. So those are the assumptions that was agreed upon at the last long-term plan, and we went out really, and this was in the consultation document. Years 1 to 6, looking at the table now, years 1 to 6, the average cost to council, net of the subsidy, of the Waka Kotahi subsidy, was, the average cost per year was $225,000, and with the 60% split to the forestry sector and 40% split to the rest of the ratepayers collected through the, as I said, the roading rate, the forestry sector was paying the targeted rate of $155,000. It was projected in years 7 to 10 that the cost would increase to $490,000, and the cost to the forestry sector, the targeted rate, would increase from $155,000 up to $294,000. That was the modelling done then. The work that Damien has done and the roading budget that we've put into the draft long-term plan, the gross cost, before all the subsidies, all that sort of stuff, the gross cost to the roading network for those 3 years, 24, 25, 25, 26, and so on, first 3 years of the long-term plan, you can see the 1.4 million up to 1.68 million. The targeted rate to the forestry sector, we're suggesting for year 1 of the long-term plan will be $287,000. Now the 135 number up there, that's what we're charging right now. So it increases from 135 up to 287. thousand, which is an increase of 113%, and then increasing to $306,345,000. The last two lines then on that slide, the average targeted rate, that is, we divide the total rate for the forestry sector, the $155,000 and then $287,000, divide by the number of properties. Currently $752, that will go up to $1,562. Now, just note there, note the number for 2024-25. So it's gone from $155,000 up to $287,000. Going back to the previous slide, it was going from $155,000 up to $294,000. So we're there or thereabouts. We're just under what we were predicting it was going to be 6 years ago. So basically in line with what we said it would happen. So as far as the consultation document goes, what we're suggesting is that we increase the targeted rate to the forestry sector to the $287,000. It will not be a consultation question because the targeted rate is in place, but there will be information in the consultation document outlining the increase of this rate.
I'll just pause there Helen, you've got a question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Mike. I don't quite get the numbers. So if the gross, did you say the gross, that 1.4 is the damage, the extra cost to our roading network?
Yeah, that's the damage to our roading network caused by forest harvesting and logging.
So in 24, 25, if it's 1.4 million, I thought we were looking at, and then you get your subsidy. Is that net or gross?
Yeah, so the 1.4 is gross.
Okay, so if we bring that down to net, which is what our ratepayers pay, that would be only
39% of that.
39% of that. And therefore the 287,000 is 60% of, because we're charging forestry 60% of the extra.
Yeah. So I didn't.
So the numbers are right, are they, in terms of
the
that?
numbers are right. Sorry, I didn't want to put too many numbers up there. Just didn't want to confuse. So 1,490, $1.49 million. Our share of that, net of the Waka Kotahi subsidy, is $581,000.
And
so
then
of the
60%.
581, 60% of that is 287.
Okay.
And then the 40% is 232,000 that will go into the general roading rate.
Right. So this is in alignment with what we've done in previous years. So the only real question we could say is, would we want to increase the share that the forestry sector pays as opposed to our ratepayer pays? That's that 60-40 split.
Yeah. Look, officers' views. We did some fairly robust discussions back in 2018. The arguments, I think, still holds in the fact that the public good element of the forestry industry to Wanganui, and I'm also conscious that the average rate is more than doubling. And so you again come back to the affordability for the sector as well. But if the decision is to increase to 60%, then we can certainly do that. And perhaps, before question, one comment is that this is going in the consultation document. It doesn't fix it. It's putting out to the public, and then through the deliberations process, you can always change. Right. Sorry.
Thank you, Mike.
Councillor Rob?
Yeah, thank you. Mike, as you know, that the pushback from the forestry sector is usually that they pay the rate maybe for 25 years before they do the damage to the road, because they only damage the road when it's harvested. So is there a logical argument that we put up to mitigate that?
Yeah.
it seems to be difficult to argue against, and also there's the argument that they put up that some of the forests don't use our roads, they use a state highway.
Yeah.
Parapara, for instance.
So, good questions. This is a rate. Okay? Rates are not perfect mechanism, and for this particular issue, rates are found to be short as far as being a perfect mechanism. So we admit that up front. There is, I'll be quite bold here, there is no viable alternative to this. So having accepted that, when we looked at this in 2018, roading is allocated based on capital value. The forestry land properties have significantly lower capital value than other farming type properties. A number of reasons for that. One of the reasons is that the forest itself is not included in capital value. QV does not value the harvest, the forest trees, when they do the capital value of the land. So we challenged QV on the value here. Two properties side by side, one classified as a forestry property, one classified as, say, beef. The forestry property, exactly the same contour of land. The forestry property will have significantly lower value. So that means because the capital value of forestry is significantly lower, and that's used to allocate the roading rate, they pay very small amount of the roading rate, full stop, very small. And the argument is that during, now forest harvest is usually about 27 year cycle. I know it differs there or thereabouts. The argument is that for that 27 years, they are actually accessing the forestry properties. They have to do pruning, they have to do all that sort of stuff. They are accessing our roads. So the rate they pay covers that type of stuff, but certainly the rate they pay does not cover the impact that the logging has on the roads. And that's why we introduced the new targeted roading rate.
Okay.
Just a quick question. Can I just check my understanding? Is that if the targeted rate was 1562, that would recover our portion of the damage to the roads after taking into account Wakakahi's contribution? So
No, the under using the model that we've got at the moment, the target rate increases from 732 up to 1562 average per property. Across the forestry sector, that recovers 60% of our costs for the road.
60% of
The other 40% will be spread across the roading activity
network.
and every ratepayer in the roading activity will pay a portion of that.
Okay. But ultimately, with the targeted and the general rate, that's what will pay for our roading budget.
Yes.
Thank you.
General roading rate will pay for it, yes. Right. Can I move on?
No lights on? All good.
Right, insurance. This is not pretty. We've very recently received invoices, and it's not telling a very good story. Right. I've got up there the 22-23 cost and the 23-24 cost. These are the costs, the premium, the insurance year that it covers is from 1st of November through to end of October. So the 23-24 premiums will cover from last month to the end of October next year, which is the first 4 months of the long-term plan. Right, so the infrastructure has gone from 975,000 up to $1.582 million. That's an increase of 607,000, 62%. The material damage is buildings, assets above the ground. Material damage has gone from 1.55 million up to 2.495 million, an increase of 940,000, 60% increase. The other policies, and we've probably got another 8-9 other policies, you can see they're gone up by 108,000, 30%. The total insurance premiums, this is GST exclusive, from 2.89 million up to 4.55 million, an increase of 1.65 million, 57% increase. We have not budgeted for a 57% increase in premiums. Now, round about $500,000 of that 4.55 million is for our CCOs. We will on-charge that to our CCOs. Don't forget, we have the harbour endowment portfolio in the port, a couple of the holdings, property assets we insure through our council schedules, and we on-charge them. Some of that insurance premium, we will, a smaller amount, but we're still on-charge through to those who lease our buildings, and if it's in the lease agreement, they pay insurance costs, and they will be paying higher lease costs. So we'll cover some of that. However, we have not budgeted for this size increase. In my mind, in my view, these sort of increases are unsustainable, and decisions need to be made. Now, I don't sit here with a solution to this right now, by the way, but things that we need to think about, mitigation measures. So that 4.5 for council CCOs, if that keeps on going up, you just can't keep on absorbing that sort of increases. And I think some of the items, news items coming about council's rates increases, and one of the factors that always is in there is insurance. And Mayor Andrew has also talked about the 3 I's in insurance, one of those. So how do we actually work to reduce this in a prudent manner as opposed to just reacting? So we can look to increase deductibles. Deductibles are what we pay before insurance kicks in. So for example, for our material damage, we have a couple of different layers of deductibles, but the main deductible is $100,000. Infrastructure is $500,000 or $1 million, depending on different layers. So $100,000 for material damage. Material damage has gone up by $1 million or $900,000. If we increase that to $200,000, $500,000, what does that mean for our premiums? And we need to work through that. Consider different cover for different assets. What I mean by that is, rather than automatically having insurance for full replacement cost, do we say some assets we will replace for functional costs? So if it burns down, we're not going to replace like for like. We may replace something different, or we may not replace it at all. Maybe we get insurance for demolition costs only. So through the Risk and Insurance Committee, we have put forward an insurance strategy, and part of the work program going forward is what we term doing an asset selection policy. We will start with our key material damage assets on our material damage policy, our key buildings, and start asking those questions. Have we got the right amount on there? If it burns down, what do we do? Do increase the premiums? We start asking those questions. That goes through to the Risk Insurance Committee, comes through to Council for decisions. Increasing our risk appetite. So that's a question that we need to have going forward. What is our risk appetite for this? Because insurance, in context, Insurance is all about transferring risk to a third party at a price. Now, if we have an increased risk appetite, we may decide that a less amount of risk will be transferred to third parties, which would reduce the premiums. And couple points and then question. The other thing is selling assets. So we've talked about, and one of the levers we are pulling to bring down assets down, bring our rates down, is selling assets. Now, if we're selling an asset that incurs a significant insurance cost, by selling that asset, we reduce the cost. So, and the question that's in the back of my mind, which we need to talk about with our insurance brokers, the 23-24 increase to premiums, is that a one-off increase? So two things drove that increase: an increase in the asset values and an increase, and there was a hardening of the insurance market with all the events going on. They increased their rates per asset they were insuring. So their rates went up and the value of our assets went up. That's a double whammy that hits our premiums. Is the increase in premiums a one-off increase to reflect events such as Cyclone Gabriel? Or does it reflect a paradigm shift in the cost of insurance? In other words, this $4.5 million is actually now the new norm, and premiums will start going up. That becomes the base, and then premiums go up from there. Or does that 4.5 come down? Look, probably unlikely, but again, that's a question that we kind of need to ask. So through all of these measures, and I'll take questions, after this comment, through all of these mitigation measures, I'm not convinced that we need to increase our budget by the amount we've got up there for a long-term plan. I think we should be looking through a risk insurance committee to, through those measures, start to reduce premiums. Because I said this is not a sustainable thing going forward. What it means for the long-term plan now that we're doing is that, yes, we will need to increase the budget, but not the amount that we've got up there. It's kind of the only thing I can say right now. Officers were kind of taken a little bit aback by this, so we need to work through what this means, and we'll do that over the next little while. So happy to take
just kick in
questions.
There, first question. You said officers are taken a bit aback, and on the previous slide you said it's pretty ugly, which we all knew that was happening. My question is, and I just forget all the detail, but is this is factored into the LTP for next LTP? Is that right, or is this new information?
We had an increase in the insurance budget
Yes,
in
you
the long-term
did,
plan, but not to this extent.
Not to this extent, okay.
So we do need to increase the budget. Don't forget the 4.5, that premium will expire at the end of October. So we do have, if we put mitigation measures in place through the year, that will reduce our 24-25 premiums, which affects 8 months of the long-term plan, first year of the long-term plan.
Okay. David.
Just for clarity, as Mike has said, we'd anticipated an increase. What we hadn't anticipated was an increase this big, and this is, as Mike has said, taken us aback relatively recently. I think you received the invoices on Friday, Mike? Yeah. So we found out about how big the increase was going to be on Friday. At $1.6 million, there's a 2% increase to rates, and at $4.5 million total cost of our insurance, that's almost 5% of our operating cost just to pay for insurance. It's crazy.
Yeah, look, yeah, it is. Right, Helen.
Yeah, I've really only got a comment. Look, I think it's eminently sensible to really hone in on the insurance. We should have a much higher excess than that. I've certainly, look, I think there would be an appetite for that. It has to be managed. Did you say you're setting up a little subcommittee for that, or was that just working with the insurance brokers?
It's the insurance program and work will go through the Risk and Insurance Committee
Yeah.
to, at this stage, probably make recommendations through to council.
Yeah, I think there's some real areas. Yep, look, I'm fully supportive. Go for it.
Councillor Glenda.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm supportive too. Mike, what was the increase that you budgeted for? Obviously not 57%.
We budgeted, I can't remember the dollars, we budgeted about a 21% increase.
Okay. Right. Yep. Thanks.
Councillor Rob.
Yeah, is it going?
Yes.
Yeah, my insurance average was 55% increase, so I'm not surprised. But is there any room, Mike, to consider self-insurance here? I mean, just as an example, I was paying $1,000 a month for health insurance, and I decided I'd put $500 a month aside and build up a fund. And is there any room for that sort of within what we do?
That we used to rate to put in a self-insurance fund. It was one of the things that went reasonably early when we were trying to squeeze rates so low, squeeze costs, so we reduced that and eventually zeroed it out, so we don't at this stage. If a decision is made to do that, that's fine, but we then need to introduce a new rate to actually do that, which would be an increase to rates. The other way you can do this is through having balance sheet capacity. So if an event happens, the risk that council is prepared to take, does council have balance sheet capacity to absorb that risk, knowing that an event happens and we have to draw down debt to fund repairs, that will then be a cost to the ratepayer as we repay that debt. That's all part of the equation as we talk about risk appetite. How much are we prepared to accept through either self-insurance or balance sheet capacity?
It's not something we have to solve now, is it?
No, there's no decision right now because we need to work through some stuff. What I'm saying is that we will need to increase the budget long-term plan by some amount for year one. It won't be the amount we've got up there, but it will have an impact on that rates that we've gone out with, just highlighting that right now.
Okay, Councillor Peter.
Yes, thank you, through the Mayor. My question is about cash flow. So when does the pinch start to hurt? So that's when we have to make the decision.
No, cash flow isn't an issue for us at the moment because we have plenty of facilities to draw down debt to fund the bills, and at this stage we are well under annual plan projected debt. So we are about to draw down some significant borrowings next week or so, as I highlighted at the committee last week, actually draw down another $10 million to start paying some of these bills that are coming in.
So when does the decision have to be made?
What we will be doing, just for your information, the $4.5 million, we'll be paying those invoices this week, next week. We have to pay them. So we've got some insurance cover, and then we will start work.
Recording in
the new
progress.
year around how to mitigate that going forward.
Cool, thank you.
Just maybe elaborate on the fact that because this is falling in this financial year, it's outside of our annual plan budgets, we're either going to push us to a deficit this year, or we have to seriously tighten up our debt.
Yeah, a good point. This is the additional cost here is unbudgeted expenditure, and it will be funded through loans. And so we are starting to, as we discussed last week, having to start funding some major capital projects as they're proceeding. So what we need to do, part of the process we need to do in determining what the budget looks like, is re-look at our opening debt position caused from this unbudgeted expenditure and whether that itself impacts on the long-term plan rates. So there's a bit of work for us to do behind the scene. If we start getting close to our debt ceiling through the annual plan and through my regular reports to the Strategy and Policy Committee, we'll give you some certainly some early indications of that.
Okay, fire away. Yeah.
David's probably wanting to
Oh,
counter
you
it.
go.
You jump in.
And yeah, so we borrowed on unbudgeted, so we borrow more, so then our interest rate goes up as well. So we have to, well, the interest rate doesn't go up, but our
Interest
interest
cost will
payments,
go up.
yes,
Yes.
yeah. That's a significant factor too, to come into the equation of when the pinch hits.
It's a double whammy.
Yeah.
David.
Yeah, look, for clarity, this is an increase in our operating costs that wasn't budgeted for. It will push us into a deficit for the year that will be, whatever that deficit is at the end of the financial year, will be funded through debt. But in the meantime, we still have 2 full quarters of the year left to go where we'll be managing our operating budgets to try and pull back that deficit and shrink it as much as possible. That obviously just means that we have to work harder to find the efficiencies and opportunities for savings elsewhere in order to minimise the deficit. But as you can tell, extra $1.6 million hitting us this year is going to be a big deal. And I don't anticipate we'd be able to completely claw back all that deficit, just reduce the gap.
Councillor Kate.
So just carrying on from that, yes, there's an effect on this year, but also for 2 quarters of next year, we'll have half of this increase, and we would be hoping to revisit our risk appetite and take those mitigation measures to reduce, for the second half of next year, the cost of our insurance. So are we thinking to change the percentage of rate increase to include the at least half of next year's increase?
We will need to increase the insurance budget in the long-term plan.
In your plan, I'm talking.
And what we will factor in, there's no hard and fast scientific answer to this. This is thinking about, with these measures, what is realistic that we could reduce our premiums by, and how much we can reduce our premiums by will impact the last 8 months of the first year of the long-term plan. Does that make sense? So this premium here for 4.5 or $4 million net of our CCOs, this premium covers the first 4 months of the long-term plan. Okay, so if we can reduce this premium, then that will flow on to the following 8 months of the first year of the long-term, from November 24 to June 25.
Okay, look, it probably doesn't matter. My question was about, do we need to revise our rates increase forecast, given that we've got this,
so our current 9.6
sort of,
is likely to go up.
So my next question is, can we have some information, you know, when we go through the process of risk appetite, about what changes to levels of deductibles, etc., might impact on our insurance? Because as we know, there are certain levels that you pay for, and it doesn't matter what you do to tweak the edges of what your cover is, it's going to cost you that much. So we'll need to have a bit of information out of our insurance broker.
Absolutely. I had already spoken to my team about a work program for insurance for next year. This here now speeds it up and says we need to perhaps put a bit more work into this up front and start making some decisions fairly early in the year.
Yep.
Because you're right, if we increase the deductible from 100,000 up to 200, it may have very small, minimal impact. if we decide 2 or 3 buildings just to put them to demolition as opposed to full replacement, that may have a minimal impact. We need to start doing a lot of in-depth work on this.
Yeah, agreed. Can I just make a request? In one of your slides, you talked about selling assets as a mitigation to keeping rates increases down. I think we need to just be careful with our language in that we're selling assets to repay debt to reduce interest costs. It's not like we're selling assets to selling the family silver to pay for the operational costs, I guess.
Yeah, look, good point.
Just-
I
yeah.
didn't mean to imply otherwise.
All good. Thank you.
Councillor Philippa.
Yeah, thank you. Does this, our underground, does this include all our underground assets and kind of, the MW less, or where I understood, maybe it's changed, that basically there was a, councils across New Zealand were, had insurance, with all that, all the underground assets that all the councils are sitting with. I mean, there's a cost to us, but with, is it MW less or are we now responsible? Is this all our assets above ground and underground?
Yeah, the infrastructure up there, the infrastructure numbers up there is 3 water assets under the ground, and also some critical bridges we've listed on the schedule. Some of the infrastructure assets above the ground, such as our treatment plant, we put onto the material damage policy simply because it's better insurance coverage for that, and is cost effective doing it that way. So this is our premiums for Wanganui. We are part of a collective of other councils, which I won't go into detail now because it gets fairly complex, but we have our own separate insurance, but we're also part of a collective number of councils, 6 in Mandatory Wanganui, 3 in Hawke's Bay, where we take out combined insurance as well. But for all of that, there's the numbers up there. There's a paper to risk and insurance in the August meeting, I believe, which has a full detail of our insurance policies and exactly what you're talking about. So it's a good paper to go and read to get details on insurance.
But in brief, that doesn't cover completely all our insurance. Some of our insurance is with a collective.
No,
Is that
no,
correct?
you're talking about what used to be the LAP, Local
Yeah.
Advisory, not sure what it stands for, where for the underground assets, all the councils across New Zealand went into a collective and they insured each other as opposed to going to the markets effectively. We withdrew from that in about 2012, along with most other councils withdrew from that.
So bottom line now, is it not seen as collectively, whether across our region or across the country, that the combined, I mean, what councils own is immense. There's not a collective strength. But is it around the fact that what's so their risk profiles are so different, and a little bit like what happens in Gisborne, for example, that's going to have flow-on effects to us. Is that kind of basically it, or is there a whole lot more to it?
No, we do go in as a collective. So collective, as I said, with 6 Mandatory Wanganui councils, Palmerston North and Horowhenua are not part of the collective, and 3 Hawke's Bay councils. We go as a combined collective to the London market to purchase insurance as a collective, which helps bring premiums down. The whole country doesn't go as a collective. Yeah.
Okay, I'll let us.
Okay. Councillor, I think Helen was next.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. So normally you do get advice fairly early on in the process of what the premium's going to be, and it gives you an opportunity then to say, hey, that's too much, we want to take a higher risk profile, and then you negotiate before you finally settle on it. Sounds like we're already have accepted this increase. So was there not that opportunity to go back and say, hey, we'll take a higher excess or we'll do something?
We did get an indication that insurance was going up, which is what we budgeted for, but not at this level. we're really at stage now that we need to pay these invoices because it covers from 1st of November this year, so we don't have much choice over this. The choice will be going forward for the next year's premiums. Now, if we decide to change our coverage during the year, does that mean we get some credits for this? I can't answer that question.
Okay. I think, yeah, look, timing wise, I just don't understand that, because with such big numbers, we should have had the opportunity before you had to lock it in and pay to renegotiate. I think that needs to be looked at, Mike.
Absolutely, there are learnings we take from this as well. So this is an uncomfortable situation, and so we will obviously take our learnings from this.
Yeah, so just to your point, Helen, I mean, it sounds like we've just received the invoice, yet it's valid from 1 November. So can you just explain why there's that delay?
We received the invoices, I understand, last week. They gave us a heads up that the insurance was going up, but I didn't understand it was going to be going up this amount. So
I guess my point is it seems unusual to have an invoice that is provided post the cover period.
Yeah, granted. Look, I'd have to go back and look at all of that. I can't answer those questions right now.
Okay. David.
Look, what you're hooking into here between you and Helen is potentially a process deficiency from our insurance provider. We need to just double check before we approach them. But if it looks like it's played out the way or if it has played out the way it looks, where we've been given an indication of a price increase and then we've actually received, with pretty limited forewarning, a price increase that was double what was foreshadowed, we'll certainly be having a pretty robust conversation with our supplier around the lack of process around this. But we just need to double check that we've not missed something internally before we go and level accusations at our suppliers.
Yeah, no, for sure. Councillor Charlie.
Yeah, thank you. These figures, do they cover complete loss, Mike, or is it just part of? The reason I asked that, the wastewater treatment plant, it's hardly like to lose the whole thing, are we?
It is replacement cost, full replacement cost.
I mean, look at Christchurch.
So, what with the wastewater treatment plant, well, would you be expecting a total loss on it? And by not having a full cover, wouldn't that make the premium cheaper?
Part of the insurance process is looking at how you mitigate losses in an event. For example, if you have the pipes under the ground, if they are of stronger material, that reduces the damage to those assets. I assume the same theory would apply to the assets above the ground as well.
Look, I'm going to suggest, in the interests of time, we move this on. Mike has already outlined we're going to go through a process that looks at the quantum of coverage we have. Getting into specifics right now around how much we insure the treatment plant for and whether it's total loss, partial loss, we're not going to make much progress. There's a lot of work to do before we can bring you recommendations back on that front. But key headlines are we've been surprised by the level of increase. It's going to have a material impact on this year's budget, as well as a flow-on impact on the rates for the first year of the LTP. We're going to do our best to mitigate both of those impacts, but it's a challenge that's been laid in front of us.
Yeah, so to round that up, I just want to acknowledge the extra workload that this puts on you and your team. And I'm sorry that this comes a week before Christmas. Yeah, so thank you very much for the information so far and all the work, extra work on top of your massive workload.
Thanks, Charlotte. Yeah. So just for the record, for those that are online watching this, we've got to remember that this is live streamed and we're open and accessible to all. The 3 I's that I've talked about, this is a very real example of insurance, the impact that has on our rates, and you said that, Mike, but here we are facing into it right now and seeing the impact on rates, and to be, I guess we'll see the impact of the various scenarios, high, medium, low, on what this increase has on each of those scenarios. Yeah. So time to move to the next topic, is it?
Yep, so I'll hand it over to Elise. There's only a couple more slides to go before the morning tea.
Welcome, Elise.
Morena, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mayor Andrew. So I know your coffee break is cooling, and you will be pleased. This is the slightly easier part of the update. I've got a couple of progress updates for you. So we'll start with the performance measures, and I may call on Louise as she's done a significant amount of work on this, so if we have questions. So this is really a progress update to let you know that we've now completed a comprehensive review of all 130 non-financial performance measures to ensure they're fit for purpose and provide a meaningful assessment of Council's activities. So we are required to have these. I don't think I need to sort of reiterate what they are and why we have them, but they are a key part of the long-term plan process. So we've met with all activity managers across the whole organisation. We've run through all of the measures to ensure they can be understood by the community, as well as they're robust in terms of our subject matter experts providing their input. A key driver for this is that we want to reduce the reporting and audit burden. So we actually have had direction from audit that they are more than happy for us to condense our measures. And the number of measures that we had was out of line with other councils. We did have quite a lot for the size of our council. And on top of that, we've reviewed other councils of similar sizes to see how they're approaching their measures, and we've looked at the best practice guides and audits. So where we've got to, we are proposing a reduction from 130 to 92 measures. It's still, Jenny just said, still quite a lot. It is still a fair number, but it is comparable with other councils, and 25 of those are mandatory. So those cover the waters and transport. We cannot remove them unless we get direction from DIA, and that would apply to all councils. We are proposing 49 are removed, 11 new ones at this stage to be put in, and at least 80 of them we're proposing changes to the wording of the measure, the target or the method. So it's been a really rigorous review going through each one line by line, and I think we started to see stars at some point when we were going through those. And I just really want to note that those that have been proposed for removal, the data will still be collected. It's really about the fact that a lot of the measures were internal. They weren't relevant to the community. In some cases, we struggled to collect the data. In many cases, they were legislative timeframes or compliance that the council has to meet, and we will continue to meet those deadlines and those legislative compliance. But the target was only ever achieved or not, and it didn't tell us anything meaningful about, you know, are we improving services? Are we meeting community expectations? Are we making a service more available or meeting our strategic goals? If it's a very technical detail about legislative compliance that the community doesn't understand. And I just want to note as well, the examples, sorry, I jumped forward a slide, I'll just go back to that one. The examples of the new measures were really around things where we didn't have anything at all on climate change. We didn't have anything around activating our open spaces and encouraging people to get out and use them. So since we've put in our new open spaces physical activity strategy, we've put in suggested ones for the velodrome, community dog initiatives, and a number of other ones just to pick up where some things have changed since the last long-term plan. And just another example of one that we've excluded is around the libraries. There was a measure around internal rate of collection turnover being greater than 7, and our library staff said that's only relevant to us and we don't need that to be audited. That's something we manage internally. So what we're hoping is bringing this number down will certainly benefit us in terms of compliance, but it doesn't reduce the data that's being collected overall. It just means that we don't have to go through as much of the audit strain. So I think I've said that first point a couple of times. Just reading through to make sure I've captured all my points. And just to note, we're working on a revised community views survey as well. And just a final point is that in terms of the targets, a key change we've made is in our existing long-term plan, we've set ourselves very specific targets. We might say 58,500 or 93% or something very specific. So where it is possible, we've made a key change to trend data. So improving on the year before or increasing on the year before or maintaining, or in some cases we're trying to decrease, where we're trying to mitigate issues. So that really shows us, are we going in the right direction, rather than have we hit this very specific number that we've set ourselves that in 3 years may be very difficult to achieve or may be unrealistic. And a number of other councils use this trend approach. So we feel it's more appropriate to show, are we on the right track? So next steps, we'll be sharing a copy of the draft measures with you and seeking your feedback in the new year, ideally by late January. And then we'll be looking at our vision for Whanganui, our new wellbeing strategy for alignment. That's really about, are there any gaps there after we've looked at the strategy? Then we'll review those changes, any changes to level service before it goes out for consultation, because if we are removing any levels of service, we need a rationale for why. And if we're removing any measures, we need to also provide a rationale. And as mentioned, audit is more than happy for us to reduce these. So the fact that they are internal measures or are not appropriate for the community or are no longer meaningful is sufficient for that. So then we'll get a complete set out for consultation with the long-term plan package. It'll go through the same process as everything else in the long-term plan, and then following deliberations, if any further decisions or changes are made, we'll relook at the measures then. And they will come into effect from the 1st of July next year, first annual report 2025. So we still have one more annual report next year with our existing measures. So it is quite a long process, but I think we've done a really robust review. So this was really just a progress update to let you know where we've got to. Any questions on that one?
Yeah, thanks, Elise. My question is around the targets you had on the previous page there.
Numbers?
Yeah, the next page.
The trend
Key
data.
changes to trend where...
Improves from the year before.
Yeah, the last point, sorry, yes. So is it possible to also benchmark against other councils? I assume they use much the same information, much the same performance measures as we do. So it'll be I think it'll be interesting to know how we compare against other councils in regard to performance. Is that a reasonable question?
I think it's a reasonable question. David looks like he wants to answer, so I'm happy to hand it over.
Thanks. Look, benchmarking is an important tool. I think it's done through a different avenue. We've previously participated in the council mark process, which is very specifically a benchmarking exercise across local government, and we've had some conversations with the providers of that assessment about booking in potentially later next calendar year to go through another assessment and see how we're progressing since the first report. I think using our performance measures as a way of doing that is fraught with a few challenges. One, a lot of our performance measures are bespoke and specific to us. We're the only ones in the country with a Royal Opera House, for example, so your opportunity to benchmark there is limited. Quite a few of the measures are population-based, so visitation to venues and events. There's very little insights you can get. And also we need to be mindful that all of our performance measures have to be audited, and that's one of the motivators for reducing the numbers, is it helps us cut our audit costs. So we need to be a little bit clinical and targeted around how we use these measures, but absolutely we ought to be doing other benchmarking.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Kate.
So that's what my question was about audit costs. Have we had a conversation with the auditor, bearing in mind that we're reducing our number of measures?
Well, we've certainly had direction from them about their happiness for us to condense those. I haven't been involved in any conversations with audit about costs. Mike, has there been any conversation with audit on?
Sorry, they set their 3-year audit program.
Just sorry, Mike, if you could just speak into the microphone, we need people online about it here.
They give us their estimated fee for a 3-year period block, but they will then invoice us on actual. So if actual work is less than what they projected, then we'd expect to see a lower actual audit fees.
As long as we're conveying that.
Yeah. So through your worship, the short answer is yes. We're having ongoing conversations with the auditor, and the clear expectation is if we've got less work for them to do, we pay less.
It also reminds me that we put a remit to LGNZ, which was passed at the conference, and I'm going to ask for an update on that remit to see where it's at. That was around remit audit costs, which was I think all councils were sympathetic to that remit. Peter, Councillor Peter.
Yes, Elise, fully in favour of doing the trend measurements, but if we lower the level of service, how will that affect the trend? Because if we lower the service, the amount of complaints will go up, and there'll be...
It's a fair point. Where we are lowering the level of service, we are putting in a new baseline for that. So the first year will be a baseline, and then it will be an improvement from there.
Okay, thank you.
It's morning tea time.
Oh, sorry, I've got a couple more slides. I'll talk as quickly as I can, although I do get told I talk a bit too...
We're doing the vision stuff now, are we? Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
I talk a bit too fast, so tell me if I'm going too quickly. So, look, I won't labour this because I know Robin did a fantastic presentation on the Vision for Wanganui survey results, so I certainly won't go into detail. I just thought I'd pull up this one slide which provided the overall priorities that the community wants to see us getting on with now. I know it's tiny, so I'll read it out for you. In the environment space, the top one was parks, open spaces and greenery, river, water quality and the coast, transport and infrastructure, and recycling and waste management. Under social, community engagement and events, public spaces and recreation, housing, social support and services. So this is about the us being a conduit and linking up and pulling together with all of those fantastic people in our community who are already working in that space. Economic, business support and growth. So that's really about the local economy, employment and providing job opportunities, and increasing the average wage here as well. Council's role in management, so that's about council being an enabler for growth and supporting that growth in the economic space, and economic development and infrastructure, so that included things like roading and water. And finally, cultural inclusion and diversity, cultural events, arts and celebration, so events again popping up, greater visibility of Māori culture, tradition and language, and funding and investment into culture and the arts. So just thought I'd pop that up in terms of thinking about long-term plan, and some of those key themes overall were about people and community connecting, and their connections to each other, but their connections to places, whether they be environmental places or community hubs. That was really the overriding theme that came through. So there's a very quick progress update on where we've got to. As you're aware, we've had a steering group formed, which has included Hapu reps. We've had regular meetings. We've been making some good progress. We've now got a draft of the strategy framework completed. We've started some work on the creative material and preparing for the community consultation. We've been meeting with local designers. We think it's really, really important to showcase that this is our vision for the future, this is long term, this is about future generations and really about how we can make Wanganui a better place and not get too bogged down in the current climate that we're in and having that long-term view. And then we'll be drafting the strategy ready for feedback from elected members in February, and then the consultation to happen alongside the long-term plan. So I did want to note, in terms of building up the draft strategy for February, we already have excellent content in our existing strategies, so that will be used to build up the new strategy and pull it all into one place. So we've got a great arts plan, a heritage strategy, our recent open spaces and physical activity strategy, housing, economic development, climate change. So just want to reiterate that content won't be lost. It will be built into the strategy. It will be pulling everything into one place and bringing it into this current year, and then looking out at the challenges and opportunities and really where council should focus its effort. So quick fire update for you, just to give you the reassurance of where we're at and what you can expect to see.
Great, thank you, Elise. On that slide, if you could just go back one slide, the one where the community wants, there's no surprise to me that there's a large proportion of these wants, if you like, are around social cohesion. So I've talked a lot about social division, not just around Wanganui but across New Zealand, across the world actually. But if there's one thing that we can do in the next couple of years while rates are high, is look for opportunities where we can bring people together, put a smile on people's faces as much as we can. So I think it's great that the community are feeling like that as well, and we're going to hopefully respond to that as well. Councillor, Deputy Mayor Helen.
Thanks, Elise. So we're trying to settle on our LTP now, long-term plan now, and obviously this work is absolutely critical to help us make decisions. Now, many of the items up there, they're very broad terms, and it would be quite hard for me to say, okay, parks, open spaces, greenery is high on environment, therefore that's where we should be spending, look, I'm just going to throw 25% of our budget, so until you actually finish the public consultation, how are we going to get a little bit more detail or in-depth understanding of what's behind these broad terms up there? Can you give us any other help?
Yes, so as mentioned, we will bring you the draft strategy in February. So it still will be prior to consultation, but point taken that because of the way these things are working in parallel, the vision for Wanganui and the long-term plan, it is difficult to make changes really to the budget at this point. But we are working on, for the future, we're working on a wellbeing framework. So what will sit behind the strategy is a framework whereby you can put any project in council through this framework, and it will give you a score as to how it's contributing to wellbeing and against our strategy. It will be well set up for the future, but in terms of this long-term plan, they are obviously going in parallel. I think those, I also want to say, I think that the vision itself still will be relatively broad, because it is intended as a vision for the whole district, and we want to make sure that it's got something there for everyone in our community, but it will certainly focus on what are the council's priorities, what will the council be doing, so distilling it down to a level that will be helpful to guide the council's work, which will then, as I mentioned, dovetail into our framework. David looks like he wants to add further as well, which he's welcome to, of course.
Thank you, Elise. And just to add to Elise's response there, and I know, Helen, you've raised this with me offline before. In an ideal world, the vision and the strategy work would have been done a year or so ahead of the LTP, so that one leads the other and it informs it. We're trying to do both in parallel, which is less than optimal, and it's added work and an added challenge. But what I can reassure you of is as management, we've had the benefit of seeing the survey responses and the community feedback dripping in throughout the consultation and pre-engagement phases that we've run so far, and we've been using that in the background to inform things like the project scoring, particularly around the strategic fit, and making sure that the projects that score highly against that criteria align with the feedback that's been coming in through the vision work. So hopefully you've already got a relatively close correlation. Going forward though, you've heard me say in the past that this is a 2 LTP fix for the council in terms of implementing the business case process, becoming strategy led. This LTP is going to be considerable improvement on how we've run things in the past. The next one will hopefully be even better still, because it will have the benefit of all of the additional work that we hopefully will complete over the next year or so to really refine and inform the vision and the strategy pieces that we're putting in place now. However, in the short term, by February you'll see the draft of the strategy. It will go out for consultation alongside the draft LTP budgets. You'll then get the benefit of all of the community feedback and the hearing processes, and then there's always that kind of late adjustments that are done to respond to the community feedback in the hearings, so that you can make sure that whilst it may not be perfect, by the time you're adopting the long-term plan and the vision for Wanganui, there's really close alignment between the two of them, and the vision is as much as possible informing the budgets and the work plan that we put in for the next 10 years.
Yeah, thanks, David. Look, it is a very difficult situation, and I do feel very uncomfortable about it all. It's just a situation we're in. I think I agree with you totally with everything you've said. I think, as councillors, we haven't seen the feedback that comes in that builds into, a one-page slide, and that leaves me with that heightened level of discomfort. And it's very hard to change budgets when you've gone out already and you've said to people, we recommend you do all this, and they feed back, and then, do we do a big about face on something because there's a lack of alignment? That is actually really hard. So I guess I'm just raising that now. All I'm asking, if there was anything else that you can give us that's behind that one slide in order to inform us, I'd really appreciate that. It might be asking too much,
And
I'm just stating where my point
look,
of view is, guys.
Could I just jump in here? Sorry. Look, it is what it is. We're as a new council. We came on board in October last year. We asked for a vision for Wanganui to be refreshed. We're working as a council organisation and as elected members as fast as we can. We're also involving our community in this, as we should, for both a vision for Wanganui, talking whether it's in 2050 or years to come, intergenerational. So I hear what you say, Deputy Mayor Helen. It sounds like you're critical of the process, but the reality is that we are in an environment where we're doing both at the same time, and it will come together. They'll weave together eventually, and it's not ideal. But when we come back at the start of next year, we'll have both a LTP to consult on with the public, and also a vision and strategy for Wanganui going forward. I think from 2024, 1 July 2024, what we'll have is that most of it will be must-haves in our on the council agenda to deliver on, particularly infrastructure projects, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to weave the vision aspect into our work going forward. If that makes sense. So anyway, pass on to Councillor Kate.
Thank you. Look, a couple of things. I don't think Helen's been critical of the process at all. I think she's just looking for more information that we have, and I don't have the sense of disquiet, because I think the process that we've been stepping through, and there was certainly discussion in the middle of last year about how we were going to do a refresh of the leading edge strategy. It was before October that we were having those conversations, Andrew. But I think the reason why I don't have the sense of disquiet about a potential mismatch is because this process of engaging with our community, whilst we haven't gone to the formal consultation process, this process of engaging with our community as we are working up the moot or the set of moots that's going to go out to the community has been very deep and very rich. So I'm confident that we will go into the long-term plan, we'll change what we need to change, but we're not going out with this kind of, I don't think we'll get any big surprises. I mean, I think the depth of the information that we have gathered, the team have gathered as we've gone through this process, is good and it is rich and deep.
David, did you?
Yeah, look, maybe a final word from me, and then we'll break for morning tea. First of all, I also know Deputy Mayor Helen is not critical of the process or of officers, more just it's a statement that it's unfortunate timing and an unfortunate situation that we're having to make do with. But given we are live streaming, I did want to make a point that the work that we are doing wasn't planned for, it wasn't budgeted for. We've managed to get external funding from central government so that we can do all of this with virtually no cost to our ratepayers, and that is an important point I want to get out there if the media are listening in. The other point is we are going to carry on this workshop, but without the live stream after the coffee break, because there's a few more sensitive matters that we need to cover off that aren't ready for public consultation yet. There is a little bit more detail that we'll share with you after the break that underpins what Elise has shown you so far, that will be going out to the public once we've got that first draft written up in February, but it's not quite there yet because it's still a work in progress. So let's break for morning tea, and then when we reconvene we can show you a little bit of the next layer of detail.